So today we are here to discuss the government's Border Security, Asylum and Immigration Bill, the longest bill name there ever was, which is going through Parliament right now. So we know it's going to be taken to MPs in the next few weeks. We're not sure of exactly then, but that's the kind of timeline we've gotten. And they will get to have their say on it, basically. So this is really a pivotal moment for us to talk about it, and to take action and make sure that our voices are heard. So as well as speaking about that, we've got a wide variety of speakers that are going to talk about the wider concept of policies under Labour since they've come into government that are really punishing and harming refugees, survivors of tortures, and just generally people seeking asylum here in the UK. So some of those things we'll touch on are the citizenship ban, the refugee citizenship ban, as well as detention policies and how it's like for people going through detention, immigration detention right now. So each speaker is going to take about 5 minutes to talk about different topic and their lived experience. And I'll introduce the speakers for you right now. So first we've got Sonia Seitz, who is the CEO of Freedom from Torture. Sonia is going to give us the policy background to our Labour government and their policies that we will be discussing today. And then we will hear from three lived experience speakers who will each explore, as I said, an issue that they're facing. I just wanted to add how incredible it is to be able to have people with lived experience share their stories. And I am so honored, as always, to work alongside you and to have your dedication to do this work. So first we've got Jonathan Kazembe. So Jonathan is an expert by experience manager at Refugee Action, a trustee at Kepler Horizons, and a One Strong Voice representative as a strategic engagement group. So just a few roles. He brings a decade of community engagement experience from Freedom from Torture, as well as the NHS, as well as City of Sanctuary Manchester. And he's worked champions refugee empowerment through grassroots campaigning, frontline services, and the expert by experience steering group. And his focus is really mostly on strengthening meaningful refugee participation, which, as we know, is extremely important and vital for all of our work. So today he's going to focus a lot on the refugee citizenship ban policy that I mentioned earlier, which is a really important policy that I actually don't think has gotten much attention in the media or in a movement, but is really, really impactful in a very negative way. And he will talk about the campaign that he's working on as part of One Strong Voice. Then we've got the wonderful Nadine Tanasi, who is a UK representative sexual violence in conflict survivor and champion, also working at Freedom from Torture, managing the survivor activism work that they're doing. Nadine has been leading the work by making sure survivors' experience are used as expertise in shaping policies on matters that affect them, which I would like to add is actually not what every organization does and is something so valuable and special that Freedom from Torture do incredibly well, in my very humble opinion. She's also a member of One Strong Voice and the first coalition network of lived experience in the UK. Nadine has written poems and short stories and is also the author of My Hands, which was interpreted by Kate Whitley. She's also working with Jonathan, but we'll focus today more on the criminalization aspects of the Border Security Bill and how it impacts survivors and the really harmful policies that the government is putting forward in terms of criminalization. And finally, we have the wonderful Joel Morde. Joel is a Nigerian LGBTQI+ activist based in the UK. He works a lot with Rainbow Migration, an incredible organization working with LGBTQI people seeking safety here. He, after organizing Nigeria's first month-long Pride protest in 2019, he was forced to flee the country and to seek asylum here. And his experience as an LGBTQI+ refugee deepens his commitment advocating for that group of people. He co-founded the Two Refugees Walking Project, which is an incredible project where he is walking alongside Amanda Kamanda 2,500 miles across London, raising awareness and to kind of support displaced communities here who are LGBTQI+. He will be talking about the campaign he's doing in partnership with Rainbow Migration. And he, I have to say, is such an invaluable part of the work that, the work that all organizations, I would say, are doing around LGBTQI plus people that are seeking asylum here, and has used his voice in such powerful ways. So those are four, incredible speakers you'll hear from today. And then once we've heard from all of these people, there will be a really important time for us to come together and take action. We've set some time for us to do that together. It will be very easy and very speedy, but just to really make sure we're taking action on all of the issues and topics that our speakers are talking about. And then following that, we'll have a Q&A. So if you have any questions that you'd like to put along as you're thinking, as you're listening today, put them in the Q&A chat, and then we'll revisit those later. And we will aim to finish at 7:45, so you can still get to the park or to the pub if you'd like to do that right after this. Just before I do some housekeeping, I wanted to kind of remind us we've had more than 800 or 700 signups for this webinar. I think this is incredible. I think it very much feels like a pretty bleak time right now to be an activist in the UK and in probably a lot of the world. But this is such a strong movement that we're part of, and I think a great example of people wanting to learn more and wanting to take action. So I hope that gives you the kind of momentum that you need to go out and continue this work outside of this webinar. So in terms of housekeeping, very quickly, this is a This is a webinar streamed here on Zoom as well as on YouTube. So you can submit questions via the comments feature on YouTube, and then here via the Q&A function. And you can do this throughout, and the team online will sort through these. So we've got some for after. This is being recorded and live streamed on YouTube, so that means that it will be hosted on the Freedom from Torture YouTube page after this, and you'll be able to watch it again and again and again. Subtitles should be on for everyone if you'd like them. If here on Zoom, if that doesn't work, please let us know and we can try and help out, and they're automatic on YouTube as well. And a code of conduct has also been emailed to you prior this event. Just on the code of conduct, I'm just going to remind you just of a few things, just that we're all on the same page and it can be a safe and joyful and insightful environment for everyone. So we want to remind everyone that, as always, during the webinar, we do not tolerate any form of hate, discrimination, harassment, or harmful language. Hate includes xenophobia, racism, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, homophobia, transphobia, biphobia, interphobia, and any other kind of LGBTQI plus phobia will not be accepted. If you exhibit any of this behavior during the webinar, our team will have to remove you so that this space can remain as safe as possible for everyone here. That was a lot of me talking at you. Thank you very much. I will now pass on to Sonia. So Sonia is going to speak to us, as I said, about the policy side of things. And Sonia, would be great if you could explain in general what is going on with refugee rights right now and what this government has been doing since coming into Labour, and why this bill is really so important for us to focus on right now.
Great. Okay, thanks, Matilda, for sharing us tonight. Thanks to all our speakers. Thanks to the campaigns team at Freedom from Torture and One Strong Voice for organising this. And especially thanks to all of you who've given up a sunny evening to come and explore these really important and serious issues with us tonight. So for those of you who don't know, Freedom from Torture is one of the largest torture rehabilitation centres in the world. We're working for a world free from torture and protection and rehabilitation for survivors in the meantime. We're having our 40th anniversary this year, and I think the really important thing to understand is that since our inception, almost all of the survivors we've helped have been asylum seekers or refugees. So we have always stood with survivors in the fight for refugee rights more generally here in Britain. One Strong Voice is the first coalition of campaigners with lived experience of the migration sector in the UK. And it's just brilliant that we're going to be hearing from Jonathan and Nadine tonight, who are both members of One Strong Voice, among many other things that they do. One Strong Voice is nested at Freedom from Torture, but works in partnership with the wider Together with Refugees coalition. And as Matilda said, my job tonight is to provide an overview of the bill in context, and then you'll hear from Nadine, Jonathan and Joel on the real life implications for survivors of torture and others seeking sanctuary here in Britain. So the first, the primary message that I wanted to convey to everybody tonight before we kind of get to the bill is that together we are powerful. The backdrop to this bill is the vanquishing in last year's general election of a party that explicitly sought to whip up hate against refugees as a primary strategy for winning power, and it failed, right? In the years leading up to the election, hundreds of thousands of caring people came together across Britain to oppose the Conservative government's Cash for Humans deal with Rwanda, the housing of refugees on a quasi-hulk called the Bibi Stockholm, and the ban on asylum that was brought in through the Illegal Migration Act. And then when Labor won the election, we won all of those battles, including some historic day one promises from our new Prime Minister to scrap the Rwanda scheme and to restore asylum processing for people who'd had no choice other than to brave their lives in the Channel in order to reach our shores. So the first kind of point I want to make about the bill is that the Border Security Bill, is that it is the legislative vehicle for enshrining those victories of ours. So the bill would repeal the Safety of Rwanda Act, which was that pernicious piece of legislation that the Conservative government passed in order to get around a finding of fact by the Supreme Court that Rwanda was anything but safe. And it's also the vehicle being used to repeal sections of the Illegal Migration Act that destroyed the right to asylum for people who arrive in Britain irregularly because no other route is available for them. So without the Together with Refugees coalition, uniting lived experience leaders from One Strong Voice and beyond, and people of conscience up and down this country, and our brilliant movement lawyers as well, these momentous victories would not have been achieved. And I think it's even more stunning when we think about the backcloth of an authoritarian tide that is sweeping across so many liberal democracies at the moment, including Britain. But it is the purchase of far-right politics that also means that we need to re-energise our campaign for a fair new plan for refugees and ensure that we're showing our strength in ways that are felt by MPs and more generally by the parliamentary community in Westminster, including during the passage of the Border Security Bill. Okay, so coming on to a little bit more detail about the bill. It is one of the great tragedies of this new government that its strategists believe that Labor needs to appease the far right, especially when it comes to refugees. Ministers say that they want to change the tone of the debate and avoid punching down on refugees, while pretending that they can stop the Channel crossings via a law and order approach without making safe routes available for the tiny fraction of the world's refugees who are trying to reach Britain, usually because they have family connections here. So even though it gives effect to some of our most important ever collective campaign victories, the primary political purpose of this bill is to project the image of a government devoted not to restoring humanity to Britain's asylum system, but rather to cracking down on border control. The big problem with the bill in general terms is that it treats the forced displacement of refugees as a national security problem rather than a human rights issue in ways that will inevitably create further harm for people on small boats, especially who are fleeing unimaginable horrors in torture chambers from Afghanistan to Iran, Eritrea and elsewhere. And this is why we have launched a campaign action with One Strong Voice so that you can urge your MP, first of all, not to criminalise people for the routes they take to reach safety and to allow people fleeing torture and persecution to secure protection. Now, Nadine is going to speak a little bit more about this from her experience and perspective. But we have a very specific concern that the bill creates a new offence of endangering another during a sea crossing, which we believe is likely to lead to prosecution of vulnerable people in the boats who are acting out of desperation or under the coercive control of the smugglers, right? The government itself has acknowledged that this bill will likely target parents who, in the absence of any safer route to sanctuary, are bringing their children on these dangerous journeys. So just to give you a sense of what this might look like in practice, it's really, really concerning. And then the second ask in the petition that we have opened up with One Strong Voice to voice concerns about all of these things. We're wanting the government to reverse the cruel citizenship ban, which, as Matilda said, was ushered in with not a lot of fanfare earlier this year. And what we're calling on MPs to do is to allow all refugees to find their way to be a British citizen so that they can integrate, rebuild their lives, and fully heal from their traumas. So the ban on citizenship has caused quite a lot of outrage, including amongst Labor MPs, a lot of backbench MPs. Jonathan's going to share a personal perspective on this issue, and you'll hear from Jonathan about just how devastating this ban is and why we need to come together to try and get it overturned. Now, it's beyond our sort of scope this evening, but there are many other worrying aspects to the bill which groups like Freedom from Torture are sounding the alarm about, including the fact that the bill, it's repealing all sorts of terrible stuff, which is really great. That's why it's been a huge win for us, this bill, in so many ways, and why we've not asked MPs to oppose it at second reading, but to be seeking to use the process to ameliorate via amendments, etc., some of the other sort of pernicious elements of it. But one of the things that we're really concerned about is that the bill leaves intact a lot of really harmful provisions in previous anti-refugee laws that were passed under the previous government. So one example, which I just draw attention to, is that it leaves intact a facility to enable the government to restore accelerated and detained appeals processes, which would stop refugees getting a fair hearing if their asylum claim is wrongly refused. And it would put people at risk of torture and persecution in that context. So we're not going to go into that detail today, although you'll hear from Joel about just how damaging the impact of immigration detention is on people who are fleeing persecution. And then finally, I just wanted to come back to the theme of, together we're powerful and what we can do about this. This is a primary moment for us to be coming back together, showing our strength and trying to put pressure on MPs to do the right thing and not the wrong thing. So you'll see in the link, in the chat, some links for actions you can take. The campaign action in partnership with One Strong Voice that I mentioned has already got off to a flying start. So far, I've been told by the team at Freedom from Torture, 547 MPs have already been emailed, and that represents 84% of our sitting MPs. So we're doing so well. If you've already taken that action, please can you help us to share it via your friends and loved ones, get it out on social media. And then the final point I just wanted to make is that for those of you who are ready to go to the next level, like if signing petitions isn't enough for you and you recognise that this is a moment for a much deeper level of organising and mobilisation, we really encourage you to think about signing up for the campaign's organising network that, together with refugees, has just launched as an organising wing for itself. We've already had, I think, almost 100 people sign up to say that they want to get some training on campaigns and organising in order to start organising in their local community. To make sure that the fight for a fair, effective asylum system is sustained across this parliament, via this bill and beyond. So you'll see a link to that in the chat. And honestly, if you've got the energy and the inclination, we would really love you to come and get skilled up and to join that element of the struggle. So thank you, and I'll pass back to Matilda now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sonia. Yeah, so important to kind of understand more about the bill. And I think also really important to remember to, just always remind people of the power in taking action. And I would really encourage anyone to sign up to the campaigning group you've just mentioned with Together with Refugees. I think campaigning cannot often be sold as very intimidating, but I have found it an extremely welcoming space where all skills are needed. You are needed. You don't need to be an expert in this. So I would really encourage people to come on board with that if they feel like they're ready to do that. So next we're going to be hearing from Jonathan, and from your lived experience, Jonathan, of seeking asylum here in the UK. I would love to find out basically more about kind of your experience, as well as the focus on the harms of the refugee citizenship ban, and what it's going to mean to you and to others, and how we can all take action to push against it.
Thank you very much, Matilda, for this opportunity to be able to speak here. And just want to say that obviously, before moving to refugee actions, my own story started freedom from torture. And today, my own story, and I'm so confident to be able to speak to people about question of injustice. So I'm so delighted to be here. And just echoing what Sonia said earlier on about together, we are so powerful. So my name is Jonathan Kasembe. For many years, I was a refugee. I'm now a British citizen. This is great, great news, something to celebrate. So I came to this country seeking safety and a new beginning after a difficult journey from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where I come from. Today, while I work with Refugee Action, supporting others with lived experience, I stand here representing one strong voice. As Sonia said, this is a very important group. The first time that people with lived experience of the UK asylum system can come together to raise awareness about issues that are affecting us. And today, my heart is heavy because I need to talk to you about something deeply that I feel it's unfair, something that is already hurting many people. And it's the new government rule that will stop tens of thousands of refugees from ever becoming British citizens. And this rule for me is cruel. And I want to make sure that we can stand together and oppose it. On the 10th of February 2025, the government made changes to the Good Character Guidance. It uses this when considering citizenship application. And these changes say that people who enter the UK illegally or arrive through dangerous routes will normally be refused British citizenship, no matter how long they've been staying in the UK. And this is really cruel. And since I've heard this news through my work and through the One Strong Voice movement, I've been talking to friends, to people that I work with, to so many people whose life have been thrown into even more uncertainty by these harsh decisions. When I talk to them, I hear same question again and again, and simple questions, but these questions, they carry so much pain. Question like, what does it mean for my future? What about my family? Would they ever be safe here? Will they ever be welcome in this country that I call home now? These questions come up in people's mind all the time since the ban has been announced. And let me just tell you, in the One Strong Voice, as we're working through our integration strategy, we're clear and we say that this ban stop people from integrating completely. And if I just want to share with you my own experiences of coming to this country and becoming British citizens. And I think for me, when I got my citizenship, it was like reaching the end of a long road. It was the first time I felt that I could truly rest. I could start to move on from my experiences. It made me feel free, like a bird, if you can imagine that. That's how it made me feel, like coming to the end of my pain. And if I am asked to explain how I felt and how this ban feels to so many people, and the best example would be for me to just ask you for a moment to imagine driving a car without a map, no sat nav to guide you, or no stop sign, no destination. Isn't that exhausting, right? It is, because obviously we all want to know that we can get somewhere, to know where we're going, and just keep driving and never knowing where or when, if you will ever arrive where you're going. That's so exhausting. So this is how, the reality for many refugees in a country that will say to them, you can live here, but you can never truly become one of us. And I've been in the UK for more than 15 years. And think about that, 15 years of building life, contributing, and wanting to belong. And that in itself is a long journey to just feel at home. And the only time, as I mentioned earlier on, I truly felt I belong was the time when I could finally breathe and got my citizenship. And I remember saying with so much joy to myself, hooray, this is now my country. I can fight for the king and the country because I belong to this country. That's how I felt. And I also remember this one experience when I was going to cast my vote during the election. And that felt so liberating. And to be able to vote and to have somebody who I voted winning at the end, that gave me so much power. So this is just example of few things that the citizenship could take away from so many people. And as a Catholic, now and again, I travel to Lourdes. For those of you that will know about Lourdes in southern part of France, where I go with a group of people from my local church. We go there on a pilgrimage, and there was a time when we're traveling on a flight, and I remember this one friend of mine who was traveling with me, but they were on indefinite leave, Congolese passports, and I can remember every time waiting for them on the other side of the border, kind of waiting for them to go through. It will be like watching an immigration officer taking their passport and toasting it like a piece of chicken, trying to read every single letter. But I would be on the other side and waiting for them to arrive. And that's a privilege for so many people. I see that, yes, the Labour government has done a good thing, obviously scrapping the Rwandan bill so quickly after coming into power. For me, it showed that they listen, but I feel that I have hope because I feel like they can listen again and they can do the same thing for the cruel ban on citizenship. That's my hope. Because obviously, when I hear that the Home Office or I hear the government saying, "Oh, we've deported so many people," this really stir up old fears in my mind. It just reminds me of my differences, and and when that happens, it creates spaces for those who want to divide us. And before we know it, we see anger, we see unrest, we see misinformation, inequalities, and as Sonia mentioned earlier on, we kind of like, know that the far right move into the spaces, because of that. And in one strong voice, we do everything we need to do to use our past experiences into something positive. We stand for human rights for those that have gone through same experience as we have done. And again, going back to that image I gave you earlier on about, driving that car around the UK and never reaching a destination. It's not just tiring, but it wears you down inside. And this is so important for anyone who has experienced hardship, trauma, and policies like this. It feels like you are being punished twice for things that have already caused you so much pain and trauma. And those past hurts don't just disappear like that. You lose that sense of belonging, that feeling of safety. You live with the constant fear that at any moment I could be deported back to the Congo or anywhere in the world. And this is not a good thing for anyone. And this policy is not just about paperwork. For me, it has created fear, confusion, isolation, and individual in our community feel so much threatened by this policy. And but the thing that give us hope is the strong reaction this decision has caused. We are seeing people speaking out like we are doing now. Thanks to Freedom from Torture for organizing this webinar, which is great. We can see also some MPs who are saying, this is not right. We have to do something different. They're refusing to let this go unchanged. And if we work together, we can convince the government to change these cruel decisions. And again, going back to what Sonia said, together we are so powerful. And if you would like to show support, obviously there'll be some link in the chat that Matilda will put those links in the chat so that you can write to your members of parliament. I understand the bill discussions is about to get to the reporting stage. And again, writing to members of parliament before that in the next 2 weeks will be very, very, very important, and will make sure that we can be heard. And also, the other thing you could do is, obviously, if there is any messages that you could send with, torture survivors, refugees, or anyone that's going through the anxiety of this ban, then that will be great. We'll make sure that, Matilda will make sure that you share them with everybody else that need to hear that they're not alone in this time, and there are so many people, thousands of people standing with them. So we have an opportunity now to change this with the Border and Security Bill in conversation to Parliament now. And for me and for all members of the One Strong Voice, we believe that justice denied anywhere is an injustice denied everywhere. So together, we are so powerful, and let us all say no to the borders, to the citizenship ban. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Thank you for speaking on that so beautifully. And I think, the concept of a lot of your lived experience, a lot of people won't be able to relate to, but I think we can all relate to a feeling of belonging, or a feeling of not being safe and finding safety. So yeah, thank you for that really beautiful metaphor. So now we're going to be hearing from Nadine. Nadine is also part of One Strong Voice. And she's going to be talking about another element of the campaign, which focuses really on the criminalization aspect of the bill and how this specifically impacts torture survivors and what we can do about it. Well, you're Nadine.
Thank you, Matilda. Thank you. It's been great listening to Sonia and Jonathan. I mean, it's so powerful listening to your experience. And as a member of One Strong Voice, I really want to really echo Jonathan's feeling about how frustrating this policy is. And the only hope we have is like we are hoping that the MP that are pushing back, we really make sure that obviously we support that this doesn't stand as a policy. In One Strong Voice, we have a policy. I mean, one of our priority is really to campaign for what I'll probably say integration strategy for the UK asylum system, but even though we feel like it's more about using the word inclusivity. And when people are not allowed to become citizens of this country, I think that we are simply just saying that you're not going to be welcome in this society. So it's really important. And I'm very grateful for the conversation. And just want to say, I'm an ex-service user of Freedom from Torture. So that's the best presentation I like to say, just to remind people about how important, it is to allow people to use the voices. So we had an opportunity, we felt like we had an opportunity with the new government to repeal and reform element of the Nationality and Borders Act that prevented access to justice by ensuring that those who come to the UK to seek protection have access to a system that is humane and fair. this bill, since coming to existence, has created, and I think you've heard it from Jonathan as well, a lot of anxiety and frustration in the refugee communities. You know, I'm a member of the Survival Speak Out Network. You know, I engage a lot of young people from the Young Outspoken Survival Network here at Freedom from Torture, but also, you know, our national network, the One Strong Voice. And I just want to remind us that, you know, just because a procedure is the law does not mean it's right, you know. The law is law when it's hard to be. We are concerned to see the introduction of further criminal offenses and the proposal to use counter-terrorist style power that will likely be applied to almost everyone who arrives by small boat. You know, people seeking safety in the UK are not the national security as this has been portrayed for so many years now. And, you know, we need the law that is based on fundamental human rights that this country is signatory of. While we support the repeal of the Illegal Migration Act that I will be talking, you know, obviously sharing experience of young people, because I've heard a lot of experiences and I really feel like I want to use this opportunity to highlight that. So one of the things, if, you know, anything positive, some of it about this, you know, the suggested clause in the bill is that it will, the clause that existed in the Illegal Migration Act to penalize young people for refusing scientific or age assessment and limited legal challenges, you know, we remain deeply concerned, you know, about the continued application of age assessment provision in the Nationality and Borders Act. As a network of people with lived experience and really listening to many young people, we have been consistently raising concern, you know, with every opportunity that we have with the Home Office and MPs about the serious flaw in the age assessment procedures. Border guards, misjudgment result in hundreds of children being wrongly placed in the adult system each year, posing a major safeguarding risk, and one that is not treated with the urgency that we really like to see. We are very concerned that the bill is expanding, you know, on the Nationality Borders Act. I think, you know, Sonia, you touched on that. Immigration offenses potentially criminalizing more people, including children. You know, the effort to target smugglers must not lead to the unjust criminalization of those seeking safety. I mean, you know, we repeatedly say people who are seeking safety are not criminal. Why treat them like, you know, even criminals have access, you know, to justice. Why treat the most vulnerable this way? And our concern really is that children and young people who are deemed inadmissible, you know, this provision will prevent them from being properly safeguarded. They also fail to acknowledge the unique challenge children and young people may face if forcibly returned, as well as the, you know, heightened vulnerability. So there are, you know, we see how this bill is creating new offenses. While one of the government aim with the bill, it says to be preventing, investigate, and prosecute smuggling. This measure will put torture survivors at risk of being criminalized and detained rather than providing the safety they need. So people coming by boat seeking safety had no other means of reaching the UK. We have seen the devastating impact of torture survival and children, you know, have had. Torture survival and unaccompanied children seeking asylum have had to flee war, persecutions, and really human rights abuses that, you know, we will not even dare to try and speak about in this room. They have endured a perilous journey already. And many children who come to the UK on the whole are unable to show official identity document, such as passport or birth certificate, because they have either never had them, or they've been destroyed or lost or taken, or the child had been forced to travel on false documentation. And as a result, many have the age questioned and are unable to prove their age. If this bill passes law, it will become a criminal offense for people who assist, and I heard you mentioning that, Sonia, those trying to come to the UK and those seeking to assist them. So individuals seeking help and those assisting them will be prosecuted. You know, we've had recently a consultation with our network member, and, you know, almost all of us, you know, because I've had to use illegal route to come to the UK myself. It's a form of assistance. And to really think that the government will really criminalize such acts is unthinkable. So, for example, think like Clause 18 create a criminal offense of endangering another during a sea crossing and is clearly aimed at those inside the boat in a dangerous escalation of the criminalization power under the Nationality and Borders Act. And before I finish, I really wanted to share a story because I felt like, you know what, the best way that I can really give you an idea, you know, about what people face is to share, you know, a story of somebody who has just had the, you know, criminalization experience. So this person is a young person, and obviously the name was changed. Marwan is Sudanese national who arrived in the UK by small boat when he was 17 years old. Marwan was assessed upon arrival as a significantly over 18 years old by two Home Office officials who allocated a date of birth, making him 21 years old. Marwan has since explained that the interview lasted around 10 minutes, and after the interview, he was taken to Manston Detention Center. 3 days after he arrived, he was arrested for the offenses under the section, I think Section 35 of the Immigration Act, and of facilitating the commission of a breach of immigration law by a person who were not national of the UK, and the Section 24 offense of knowingly arriving in the UK without valid entry clearance. So Marwa was then taken to Margaret Police Station when neither the police nor his criminal law representative asked Marwa about his age. Marwan was subsequently charged with these offenses and taken to Folkestone Magistrate Court the following day. At this hearing, Marwan told the court his claimed date of birth. However, as the Home Office had established his age as 21 years old, Marwan was continued to be treated as an adult for the purpose of the criminal hearing. Marwan clear communication that he was in fact 17 was disregarded, and he was sent to Emily Prison, an adult prison in Kent. Marwa was held on remand, and he told prison staff that he was 17 years old again, but because he was recorded as being 21 years old, no action were taken to safeguard his welfare. So whilst in prison, Marwa was sharing a cell with a 30-year-old man. Fortunately, Marwa was referred to a community care solicitor who visited him and then wrote to the local authority. A bail address was provided by the local authority, and it was confirmed that they would decide whether his age was accepted or a full age assessment was needed. So Marwa was released into the care of the local authority 4 months after he was first incarcerated. 1 month later, it was confirmed by the local authority that there were no sufficient ground to undertake an age assessment, and Marwa's date of birth was accepted. So he remains a look-after child and has subsequently been acquitted of any offense. And these cases clearly show that there are significant failings within a wide range of procedure and practices implemented by state actors, from the Home Office to the Ministry of Justice. I was, when I heard about the story, I'm, pleased to learn that he's recovering well. However, he is, on ongoing mental health issues, suffer from sleeping problem, and struggle to talk about his time in prison where he was subjected to violence. Between June 2022 and the end of 2024, data suggests that over 550 people were charged with illegal arrival, having arrived on small boats, and over 450 convicted. By September 2024, Human for Rights Network had identified 18 cases where children wrongly treated as adults have been charged with offenses under the Nationality and Borders Act, with 14 spending period of time had with adult in adult prison.
Thank you, Nadine. I'm sorry, we're going to have to move on.
Okay.
If you just want to finish on one or two sentences, and then we're going to have to move on to Joel.
Thank you, Matilda. So, by finishing, I'll just say we are lucky to see more and more torture survivors who seek protection facing criminal offenses, but it's not too late. We can challenge the government and ensure criminalizing clauses are removed. from the bill. Thank you. Sorry for going over. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you so much, and thank you for that really touching story. So now we're going to be hearing from Joel. Joel is a really integral part of Rainbow Migration's campaign, and in general, he's going to explain his experience in detention as a queer refugee and how we can take action to make sure we protect more people in detention who are LGBTQI+. So all yours, Joel.
Thank you, Matilda, and thank you, everyone. My name is Joel. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Joel Modi. I am a refugee, an activist, and the founder or the co-founder of the Minority Inclusion Foundation UK. Following on from Sonia and our two really important, key pointers from the other lived experience campaigners, and that's Jonathan and Nadine. I am now going to talk about another really urgent element of government's policies right now that are harming us refugees. So we are going to talk about something incredibly urgent, and that's the dangers faced by LGBTQ plus people in the UK immigration detention and how the UK's current adult at risk in detention policy fails to protect us. I'll also share a bit about my own experience in detention and what I'm fighting for now, and how, of course, you can help. As the other speakers have rightly said, we cannot do this without you. Together we are stronger. So the adult at risk policy, what's wrong? In detention, LGBTQ plus people experience bullying, harassment, and abuse based on sexuality or gender identity. As seen from my lived experience, the UK Home Office has a policy called Adult at Risk that is meant to reduce harm to vulnerable people in immigration detention center. But does it? But there's a major problem. Although the policy acknowledges that trans and intersex people are at risk of harm in detention, as agreed, it does not recognize LGBT people, and that's lesbian, gay, and bisexual people, as at risk of harm, even though evidence, reports, and lived experiences clearly show that LGBT people are uniquely vulnerable in detention, as I was. So what does this mean? It means that LGBT people like myself, my friends, and countless others can still be detained despite the known risk of abuse, harassment, isolation, and mental health breakdown that we're subjected to. It also means that the system ignores our real life vulnerability. So my experience and why it matters, and sadly it's not an isolated case. There's a plethora of people with similar circumstances. Now I know what it feels like because I've lived it. As a young gay man seeking safety, I was detained in a place that felt exactly like the violence I was running away from. And inside, I had to be constantly vigilant, often trying to conceal my identity to avoid becoming a target. This concealment was a painful reminder of the life that I had hoped to leave behind. The lack of support from staff made everything ever so worse. Mental health services were inadequate, and many of us were left to cope with our own trauma alone. So the isolation, the fear, and the uncertainty took a severe toll on my mental health. Nightmares and panic attacks became, my daily routine. And there seemed to be no end in sight because, as you may already know, detention, it's kind of like indefinite. There's really no timeline as to, you could be there for months and, turning into years. So in detention, I experienced fear, isolation, and hopelessness. I had no idea if I would be protected or if anyone even cared about what I was going through. So no one should have to go through that, especially not people seeking refuge because of who we are. That's why I now work to campaign for a system that treats LGBTQ plus refugees and asylum seekers with dignity and safety that we so desperately need and deserve. So what we are fighting for no pride in detention, as you can see from, what I'm wearing. Rainbow Migration is an incredible LGBTQ plus asylum and immigration charity that is spearheading the No Pride in Detention campaign, calling for an end to LGBTQ plus detention and a time limit on all detention. So together, we are demanding that the UK government do three things: recognizes LGBT people as adult at risk, automatically under the adult at risk policy, and two, stops detaining LGBTQ plus people simply because of our immigration status. And thirdly, create a real safe alternative to detention for vulnerable people, because there's no pride in locking up people for being who we are. So how can you act? There are powerful ways that you can get involved, and we're banking and hoping on your support. So you can support the No Pride in Detention campaign right now. Ministers are considering changes to the adult at risk policy, and there's still time to influence them. You can use the campaign action that Ben and Jerry's are running with Rainbow Migration to write to ministers about the review today before the new policy is finalized. There's still time, guys. There's still time. The link will be posted in the chat. We need, to persuade them to include LGBTQ plus people in the revised policy, and that's specifically LGBT people. So talk about it with your communities, your network, your friends. Please, we're counting and banking on your support. The more people who know that LGBT people are being harmed in detention, the stronger the pressure for change. It's a no-brainer. Why does it matter? Everyone deserves safety. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity. We are not asking for special treatment here. We're asking for fairness, for humanity, for recognition that LGBTQ plus people are already at risk, and that's again specifically LGBT people, lesbian, gay, and bisexual people. And detention only deepens the harm. So together we can build a system that reflects the values of equality, justice, that pride stands for. So yeah, and as you may already know, or if you're not aware, I am one half of the duo to refugees working. We're currently working forward and backward across the 32 boroughs and the City of London to fundraise for charities and also talk about situations like this where people are being placed in detention, and I call it backward, especially LGBT people and refugees and people seeking safety. So that's why we're doing what we do. So please join, share, follow, donate, and of course, you stand a chance to win exciting prizes. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jo, for speaking about your experience and the harm that detention creates in a specific group of people. Thank you to all of our speakers for sharing their stories and their experience so beautifully. I think, it's really important for people who don't have the lived experience like myself to now realize it's really vital for us to act as allies and take action. There is lots of links that the Freedom from Torture team have put in the chat. So if you could take a minute to take those actions, that would be incredible. We have seen, as we know, that this works. We've talked about the Rwanda plan that didn't get stopped out of nowhere. It was hundreds and thousands of people not giving up and pushing against the government to stop this. And if you've already taken these actions, please send a link to your loved ones, to your friends, your colleagues, your neighbors, anyone, and make sure the conversation continues outside of this room. As Sonia mentioned, 547 MPs have already been emailed about this bill. That's 84% of MPs. And, that shows that we have people who agree with these views all over the country and who are ready to take action. And Freedom from Torture has already been receiving responses that constituents have received from their locals MPs. So it's really clear that MPs are listening, which is why it's really important we continue to do this. And hopefully by the end of the day, get to 2,000 emails sent, because we're almost there. And it really does take 10 seconds to take the action. So we're super grateful for anyone taking those steps right now. We are also seeing a lot of progress, like Joel said, on the campaign Rainbow Migration are running with Ben and Jerry's. And as mentioned by Joel, now is really the time for those ministers to continue to hear from us, as we're expecting the guidance to be updated soon. So I would really urge you to take that action as well. We are now going to move on. I think we've got about 10 minutes to take some questions. I'm going to be sent some questions, I think. Give me just 1 second. But if anyone has any questions they'd like to put, please put them here in the chat so that we can then answer them together. So the first question I'd like to ask is, do people seeking asylum have advocates to help them when being interviewed? That could be anyone. If anyone would like to answer that, that would be just from your lived experience. I think that would be really valuable. Joel, I know that you do lots of interviewing and media, so maybe it would be good to hear from you in terms of, how you kind of tackle, how you prep for them.
Sorry, I think I missed the question.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
So do people seeking asylum have advocates to help them when being interviewed? So how is the interview process for you when you're being interviewed for whatever campaign you're working on?
Oh, great. Well, luckily I've worked with lots of charities that are heavy on safeguarding and, training, media training on owning narrative. So that has been invaluable for me and others like myself. I remember with a certain charity here in London and going through that process with other, young people at the time, that felt especially empowering, them telling us that our lived experience is not a burden, but yet it's rather a source of power and strength. And obviously there's no experience like a lived experience, and who better advocate for us than us, and owning our voice even when we shake and we quiver, but as long as we're speaking the truth. And also know that sometimes interviewers in terms of media, some of them are also nice, but others want to like spin a certain narrative, but also knowing that we have full, autonomy to either skip that question or not go down that, route with them. So I've been lucky enough to have all of that, in place. So yeah, but I thought initially you were talking about maybe Home Office initial interviews and then subsequent interview if there was anyone with me at the time.
Thank you so much. That may be how the question was supposed to be phrased. So do you want to answer that as well quickly? Because it maybe have been that and I misinterpreted it.
Of course. So upon arrival, when I touched down, there was really no one. And that was the initial interview, where they ask a lot of, preliminary questions. There really was no one. It was just me and this, strange fellow. Yeah, so there really was no one. And if obviously because I had the know-how of the lingo English, and I could, kind of like answer questions. But for other people, it's not the same because again, not everyone's first language is English. But this person, he seemed to know only English. So yeah, just because my own situation was because I had the know-how of the language does not mean it's the same for everyone. Even with myself, I didn't feel comfortable talking to this fellow because again, I had been waiting for 11 hours in a holding room, and after the fact I was placed in a detention center, so nothing really prepared me for that. So yeah, it's broken. The system is really broken, but it can be so much better. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is, what can we do together to challenge this bill and raise awareness about how unfair this is? So maybe Jonathan, you could answer that in terms of the citizenship ban rule, and that and just reminding people what they can do to challenge it.
Yes, thank you very much for that question, Matilda. The first thing you could do is just simple messages of support to torture survivors to refugees to everybody going through this. That would be very helpful. If you know someone that is in contact with refugees, with torture survivors, just send them a message to just show them that you are with them, you stand together in this tough time. And the other thing you could do is obviously the discussions in Parliament. The Borders Bill, Border Security Bill discussion in Parliament in 2 weeks' time at the reporting stage is taking place. So writing to your members of Parliament, highlighting that danger that the ban to citizenship is going to bring, is already creating into the communities will be very important. And we stand a chance to have some amendment. If we come together, if all of us can, write to members of parliament, the more of us can do this, the better. We've already seen some challenges with firms like Duncan Lewis, who's doing also, kind of like challenging the bans on citizenship. In Greater Manchester, my group, obviously the group that I manage, the Refugee and Asylum Seekers Voice, we've signed an open letter from the Greater Manchester Immigration Unit asking the Home Secretary to stop the ban on this bill. Again, we're asking a lot of members of parliament to be able to sign this open letter. So there's a lot of actions you could do, but here we have a link in the chat, as Matilda, you've mentioned earlier on, to be able to write to as many MP as possible. You could also kind of like just obviously reach out to Freedom from Torture again for other practical ways in which you can be able to support with this. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. And I think something I often think about is, we, I think, underestimate how many people we know in our lives that we can have conversations with. So, it will be most impactful for me to talk to the people in my life, and they're going to be the one listening to me the most, right? So the conversation that we all take outside of this room and have with our networks are so powerful, and that is really where the change happens. So even leaving today and saying, just sharing a link, or I heard this today, or I heard a story about safety and belonging, and that's what it made me feel, is so much more powerful than we think. So I would really encourage everyone to do that outside of here, and remember the power that you have as an individual in a government that makes you feel powerless. It's so important we continue to remember the power that we have in numbers. The next question I would love for you to pick up, Sonia, is someone has asked, how can the government justify punishing people just because of how they got here, so through an illegal route, if they have no safe way to travel here?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Exactly. I mean, I think you've heard from Nadine and Jonathan and Joel about kind of the shape shifting that's happening here, right? Like the people who we are talking about, almost all of whom go on to be recognised in the end as refugees if they are given the opportunity to have their claim processed, are people who are coming here because they are victims of, in the case of torture survivors, for example, some of the most horrific crimes that you could even imagine. And so this kind of flip in which these people are, including like some of the people who we've got on this call tonight, right? Like if they'd arrived, at a different time, would have, instead of receiving the welcome that they did and the protection they needed, could have been cast as themselves the problem in terms of criminal activity. And it's sort of really linked, and Nadine speaks so powerfully on this, to the kind of the point about stigma, and the stigma now attaching to people who are fleeing from horrific experiences or the risk of them, instead being seen as the threats to national security or branded as criminals. So, I mean, it's really, really dangerous what we're seeing happen discursively. But in real life, what that is going to mean is it's going to fuel the politics of hate against refugees in ways that we know at Freedom from Torture are going to lead to a lot of safeguarding and other protection risks for people on our soil here in Britain. So, you know, I also find it unconscionable and baffling that we have a government that has, on the one hand, done so much to try to turn the page on the anti-refugee policies that were such a hallmark under the previous government. You know, on the other hand, further increasing these risks via the offences that they're creating without sufficient safeguards, etc. So, I mean, honestly, like, I think that's exactly the question that you should be taking to your MP. So don't just sign the petition. Like, if you've got a kind of the time, like, we really encourage you to put that to your MP and ask them to answer to this, because it's nonsensical and it's dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Something to kind of fight that stigma that I think is really easy to do, that I started doing years ago, is especially when we see this continuing in the media and mainstream media so much, is every time you hear a headline that says person seeking asylum or refugee or asylum seeker, or much worse language than that, replaced by brother, sister, neighbor, friend, best friend. I think it's such an easy, simple way to start framing things differently, and remembering who we're talking about and the people we're talking about, which could be any of us. So I'm going to finish on a last question and opening up to anyone who would like to answer this. I think, as we mentioned, it's a pretty bleak time right now. We're seeing the rise of the far right, and even further acceleration of racist, anti-immigrant sentiment all over. And we've got a question on how can we challenge this when the world feels so overwhelming, and how can we do we have any advice on having those challenging conversations to really challenge the narratives about migration and refugees? So, for example, having conversations with people who may, engage with this media all the time, how can we remind them that this is not representative? So yeah, any kind of thoughts on what we can do to challenge the far right on having those conversations and still feeling, I guess, a sense of hope in this situation would be super impactful for me as well.
If I come in on that one, so when we say, we criminalize people for the routes they take to come to the country, when any person is in danger, the first question they ask themselves is, where can I get the safety? They don't think about what they bring or how they travel. It's just instinct. And then people get away from the danger. That's the first thing you do. And I think maybe the question that need to be asked is, why would someone take a boat journey and put their own children in that boat? I think that question, if we can answer that question, then we know that it's a matter of life and death when people take those risks to come to the country. So when they come here, we need to welcome them and to make sure that they feel able to rebuild their life. When we have rules like the citizenship, regulations that's in place at the moment, what we're saying is that we have two types of citizenship, two group of people, and some people are second-class citizens. And then the far right pick up on that, and then they show that in the media, and now in schools and in the communities, and then people see the boats coming, and they see the number of people we're deporting, and they pick up on that, and then you have the far right moving into this place, and before we know it, we have the riot, just like the summer that we've all remember. Which happened. It made a lot of people not even wanting to go for a walk in a park, for example. That's how it was. And it felt like an open prison. So that's the danger there. So I think the best thing to do is not to see people as a security question. We need to see people for who they are. And Joel, you mentioned about people being who they are. You can't pretend to be someone you're not. And that's very, very important. So let's welcome people. Let's hear them. Let's create spaces to be able to hear them in a very meaningful way. I think that will be very, very helpful. Thank you.
Matilda, could I just add something really quickly on this, which is that Freedom from Torture ran some dial testing a few years ago to test what kind of narratives are most impactful when trying to have these conversations with people. And on our website, and maybe the tech team could put a link in, I've already put it in an answer to one of the questions. We actually devised some guidance for people exactly on how to have these conversations with people. So we've got a really nice piece of guidance out there, which we'll make sure we recirculate to help you with that. And thanks for trying, because you can really change people's minds if you speak about these issues and respond to them in the right way.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that answer and that resource. We've got quite a lot of questions. We're going to have to wrap up. So sorry if we didn't manage to answer your questions. Feel free to email campaigns@freedomfromtorture.org and you'll be able to get some help on your answers. Or you can also follow up on the email that the team will be sending you tomorrow. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight and for being part of this really important conversation. It means the world. Thank you to our speakers for being here. It's an honor to always hear your stories and know that we are led by you to do this work is always an honor. I would highly encourage you to sign up to Freedoms from Torture's emails. They are not daily, they are not spam, they are very good, and they're an incredible organization that I would recommend following, as well as One Strong Voice and Rainbow Migration, and Two Refugees Walking, who we've all heard from tonight. There will also be a feedback form that I think has just been put in the chat. If you'd like to answer that just makes sure we can do more of these things and make sure that they're as valuable as possible for everyone here. And for anything else, just send an email to the team and I'm sure they'll get back to you. And obviously don't forget to take some action and take the inspiration that you've got from tonight to have those broader conversations outside of this room, so we can make sure we create a fair, equitable and joyful world for us to all thrive in.